April 12, 1861. Bombardment of the United States Fort Sumter began during the night by Confederate forces. The next day, Union forces surrendered to the secessionists, ending the first battle of the American Civil War. The Confederate States of America did not wait to take action. Realizing that war was now fully upon them, the Confederacy readied an army upon land. But what of the Navy? With limited sources available to the Confederacy, President Jefferson Davis came up with a solution. Privateers, privately owned vessels given military powers by the government. But what started as a short-term solution to a naval problem became a diplomatic nightmare between England and the Confederacy quickly. Shortly after Fort Sumter's surrender to the Confederates on April 17, 1861, President Jefferson Davis issued a proclamation.
All those who may desire, by service in private armed vessels on the high seas, to aid this government in resisting so wanton and wicked an aggression, to make application for commissions or letters of marque and reprisal to be issued under the seal of these Confederate States.
This call for privateers was answered quickly by President Lincoln, who on the 19th of April responded with the proclamation of blockade, promising to cut off the Confederacy's commercial ties with the rest of the world. Lincoln added threateningly,
"And I hereby proclaim and declare that if any person, under the pretended authority of the said states, or under any other pretense, shall molest a vessel of the United States, or the persons or cargo on board her, such a person will be held amenable to the laws of the United States for the prevention and punishment of piracy."
The Union's decision to treat the Southern privateers as pirates was not a shock to the North. Newspaper headlines clamored as word of President Davis' proclamation became known. Lord Lyons, the British minister to the United States, wrote frequently to British Foreign Secretary Lord Russell as the situation developed.
Some alarm is felt in the North respecting the southern privateers. Privateers are not ordinarily very scrupulous in discriminating between hostile and friendly flags, and look upon the presence of Her Majesty's ships as the sole guarantee for the safety of our commerce.
England found itself with very little room to maneuver. President Lincoln had made it clear that any recognition of the South by England as an independent nation would lead to war. Yet in order to maintain the safety of British merchants sailing to North America, as well as to continue trade with the southern states, England would either need to recognize the letters of marque given to the Confederate privateers, or rely on the allure of possible future recognition of the Confederacy to hold the privateers back.
Her naval forces are not to indicate any partiality or preference for either party.
Admiral Milne instructed the Navy in the months following Lincoln's proclamation, giving further instruction that in order to protect British commerce from the likely unscrupulous conduct of privateers, all lawful measures should be used. The commerce of the United States soon suffered at the hands of Confederate privateers.
The privateers are in full activity and have met with considerable success. It is not therefore to be expected that the Southern Confederacy will relinquish the employment of them.
Lord Lyons grumbled to Lord Russell. However, increasing tension between England and the still unrecognized Confederate States of America had led some to question the value of privateering for the Confederacy. Slidell, a Confederate representative to France, wrote with some concern to Secretary of State Hunter.
It is quite evident that privateering is an arm which can no longer be used to advantage.
Privateering had been made illegal in most European countries during the 1856 Treaty of Paris, and therefore England regarded the practice with some contempt.
Why not, then, abandon a system which experience has demonstrated to be an absolute failure, and which, while innocuous to our foes, is subject to bitter commentary by our enemies and warmly deprecated by our friends in Europe?
The next few years of the Civil War would send England and the Confederacy on a diplomatic roller coaster. Near war between the United States and England over the seizure of diplomat Slidell and Mason from a British ship, illicit dealings of the Confederate privateers in supposedly neutral British ports, and the British discovery of an alternative cotton supply alternately brought the two powers closer and further. Ultimately, however, the Confederate policy of sponsoring privateers hurt relations between the Confederate States of America and England.
As the right to make use of privateers was one in which neutral nations had, as to the present war, no interest, as it was a right which the United States had refused to abandon, and which they remained at liberty to employ against us. It was reserved with entire confidence that neutral nations could not fail to perceive that just reason existed for the reservation.
Jefferson Davis complained bitterly in 1863 over the failure of England to give the Confederacy support. Privateering would continue to be utilized by both the Confederacy and later the Union during the Civil War, but in the early months, when support from Europe was so crucial to the Confederacy, privateering legally and socially hurt their relations with England. Whether or not the choice to augment Confederate naval forces was worth the diplomatic sacrifice is a question, perhaps, that must go unanswered.